people do go into the office on a hybrid basis, they tend to actually just waste their time.
Alrighty. Sam, thank you so much for joining us today on the Wellthy Interviews, where we're going around Africa and interviewing people who are connected with companies and HR and the power of people in the coal space here about what is going on with employee well-being and psychological safety, the good, the bad, and the ugly. What do you feel is fundamentally not working in well-being in corporates in South Africa?
To be honest with you, Tim, where I would start is because a large amount of companies have kind of gone hybrid and the hybrid model. So what I've found as a result of the whole change of process with the working world in today's current, if you could say, society from what COVID sort of created from lockdown in the world globally. I found that people do not communicate and they do not really come to work on the days they actually come into work to work. It's more a social gathering and a conversation of communication that is unrelated to work and productivity. So
Right.
in saying so, I'd say across the whole country, I find that when people do go into the office on a hybrid basis, they tend to actually just waste their time. And similarly, I deal closely with a person who contracts on sites in the IT industry. And on a nice gesture, the company that he contracts for invites him to sort of their team sessions, employee well-being sessions, etc. But the problem is being a contractor, he has so much work to make sure that the back end operates and works successfully and functionally on IT. And he's not really aligned to their policies and procedures as well.
Mm.
So, in results of saying this, we had a discussion the other day about it, and we said, online meetings, meetings on site, taking forever, not focusing on the topics at hand, on the meetings, or waste people's time at work. It drops their focus and motivation as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have less time to actually catch up to the work. So as a result, that has resulted in basically South Africa work-life balance has become a massive problem for a lot of people, and burnout is becoming a huge problem in South
Yep.
Africa. In fact, this company, which I will not mention the name, obviously, they are
Sure.
dealing with a massive burnout session within their company.
Wow.
So as much as the HR is focusing on the team motivation, DI, workplace culture, and that kind of thing, and team collaboration and wellness sessions, it's actually not working because people are going to work and they're feeling like they're wasting their time when they've got very important things to do that then they have to travel to go home, to get back to work, to catch up, to make the day
Okay.
happen.
Hmm.
Then on top of that, I would say the other problem, which for a well-being sense, within in companies, is that companies are not scaled on their remuneration equitably, which means that that, of course, does affect employees and their mindset and their
Hmm.
health and well-being. Because currently at this point in South Africa, it's heading up to 75 to 80% of people that are employed signing up for debt review, which is a massive, massive
Wow.
problem as well, and increasing the pressure on everybody. Not to mention the fact that also people sign up for debt review. And I've been in a position where I was in the placement or in the process of successfully placing an applicant in a very good paying position.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, one of her verification checks came back that she'd signed up for debt review, and we had to deny her for the fact. Although it wasn't a
Hmm.
finance position, it was just the company policies and procedures. However, the problem is this, in my opinion, now, is that with all the legislative changes in our country, and also the fact they do not market or advertise it, also puts strain on the HR, the finance, and the procurement to meet the employment equity, the skills development, and the BEE needs within the next year. If that doesn't happen, they will literally close doors from a year's time plus.
Sure.
Which also, I would say that with that being put in place, I think that's added a lot of pressure and stress to companies because with dealing with recruitment as well as a recruitment consultant nationally and globally, I found that employers with the labor legislative changes have actually reduced their employee
Mm.
selection and placement count now because it's becoming too expensive. So a large amount of international companies are kind of following the route of South Africa at this point, and our typical route is you hire to do eight jobs as one person and not one.
Which
As you
adds
can
to the
see,
stress, the pressure, the workload, the lack of balance. But you're saying here
exactly.
that it's also driven from government policy when you're
Mm.
talking about employment equity and BEE. So government policy dictating what's required of the business. The business is saying, well, now it's too costly for us to employ more people, so we're just going to use less for the same job. And if you don't get the
Absolutely.
job done, well, you're out anyway, and I'll just find somebody else who can because there's so many people looking for work.
Absolutely. And then on that aspect, if you add to that, the problem is due to the lack of skills that we've experienced in our country, due to all our other challenges that we have economically, etc., over the
Mm-hmm.
years.
Yeah.
Plus in the employment equity and what I would say are allowed discrimination as such or affirmative action that we've implemented, has resulted and is still resulting in the good skills that are still available in the country sitting at home doing nothing, which means that they're hiring based on filling the numbers to this exact specific colors and genders and not the skills, which means that the companies now need to fork out additional on training, fork out additional on employment equity, making sure it gets right, getting it right, putting the systems in place. So they're spending and budgeting now completely for getting employment equity systems in place to ensure that they are compliant and do not see penalties within 5 years or
Hmm.
within a year from now. And if they do, it's going to also strangle the business itself, which in the long run actually adds a bad vibe, in my opinion, within the corporate culture because now it's hitting the finance team and the pressure there, the HR team and pressure, your procurement and pressure. It's
Okay.
very selective, and people that are the hiring managers have provided feedback to other people that I've heard of that saying that they're so tired with meeting the affirmative action needs. They want to hire people with the skills because they aren't meeting the business objectives. So at the end of the day, overall, it is actually rippling down in effect right down to the person at the bottom and the cleaner or the street sweeper that is employed by that business. Not only from the push from HR and the push from finance and the
Hmm.
withdrawal from skills development, because there is just no budget in their profit to put aside to actually do that and comply with the legislation. In an ideal world, yes, it would be beautiful if everyone had the money and everyone would comply. But my biggest problem I find in South Africa with finding business and finding clients is that companies want to comply, they don't have the budget, or they're not eager to comply because they're not willing to spend the money because government is not assisting companies in
Hmm.
understanding and applying it realistically in the practical world.
Okay. I'm going to pull us in a little bit here. Sorry for interjecting. You're talking about a very interesting line of topic where we're going, which is actually a line to an interview I did 2 days ago, where you're talking about if we're talking about employee well-being and psychological safety in the workspace, if the right skilled people with the right aptitudes are in the right positions, is the well-being less of a less of a negative? Less of a negative. That's a double negative. Is it, has it got less of an ongoing impact because they're there, their values are connected with the company, they're right position, they're skilled, they're getting paid correctly. So the needs of this psychological safety and the whole thing, which is becoming a big boom and a trend around the world, and the words
Mm.
all about this, but it's not as critical with the right people.
You're
Yeah.
absolutely right
Right.
there. I agree.
So, but
Yeah,
because of legislation from government, it's restricting companies from then employing the right people. They're bringing in people
absolutely.
to tick the box for employment equity, BE, whatever it is, which means the wrong people are coming in. Because the wrong people are coming in, they got huge workload because of restrictions of numbers of people they're going to do. But because they're the wrong person, they're going to burn out. They're not
Mhm.
feeling safe. They're not of the right aptitude or the right mindset or have the right values. So instead of it being employ the right people, you're going even one step higher and you're saying legislation needs to change
I,
to improve employee well-being and psychological safety. Would this be right?
I absolutely agree with you
Cool.
there. I feel that not only legislation is an issue, but plus then from a private individual perspective in SA, the regulation on crime in our country, which also affects our working capacity if we have developed PTSD,
Yeah.
which in my position actually I have due to criminal situations I've experienced and gone through in my
Mm.
lifetime. And when you, as an independent or a single female in our country, ask for assistance from the correct people, as in the law, they actually turn around and slap you in the face.
Mm.
Now, fortunately for me, I dealt with criminal perspectives and targeting for about 10 years in South Africa consistently. And the aim behind the game was to make me go crazy and basically lose my job. So I applied what I know from a human movement science perspective and trying to make sure that I can kind of switch off, make sure I feel safe, get a good night's sleep, get up early in the morning, get to work and do a hard day's job
Mm-hmm.
at the work site. I'm a general 4 a.m. morning bunny till like 8 p.m., 10 p.m. at night. So
Mm-hmm.
I get up early, go to work early, and I push very hard. So if I hadn't adopted the right strategies to handle my home situation, I would have lost my job and I would have bombed out 20 odd years ago. I never made it as far as I've
Right.
made it. So that also is a problem. If these things and basically if the house cleaning and the housekeeping within a country and its legislation and governing rules and regulations are not kept clean and tidy and logical and rational and practically applied and assessed amongst the
Mm.
country, ideally, I would say maybe a best plan would be throw out a pilot study on the legislation. See, does it actually work with the economy? Because currently at this point, the legislation is causing massive boundaries and constraints to
Right.
businesses, which is affecting finance, budget, employment, and remuneration, plus adding stress to everybody within the workplace from the top down,
Mm.
including the people that can't handle the work, that it's a tick box exercise to hire the people to fill the numbers and the races, etc. Then they don't have the skills. Then you've got the boss at the top that really needs the assistance to make things happen, keep on hammering the poor employee below them because they just ticked the box and they never actually did their proper checks to make sure the employee was competent to do the job.
Mm.
And then everybody else below that is affected too, as well,
Everybody
on the
does.
flow of work.
Mm.
So it affects the entire company, plus in the mental health. Plus, in, say, for example, take that employee that's getting hammered because the poor guy is not skilled enough to actually meet the requirements of the job. Then he takes the problems home to his house and he causes problems with his
At
whole
home.
house.
Right.
And
Well,
then your whole society is a mess,
so
which
here's a question
explains
for
why.
you. Here's a
Yeah.
question for you. In one of my keynote talks, I actually speak about this. When I talk about the silent crisis in leadership, which is quiet quitters and the amount of people sliding to burnout. And I asked the
Mm,
question: whose responsibility is it to help people heal? Because we're talking
mm,
about people healing. You're talking about PTSD. We're talking about trauma. We're talking about financial issues. We're talking about COVID issues. We're talking about burnout. So people need to heal. I mean, really heal. But whose
absolutely.
responsibility is it? Is it coming from home life? No, it's not. Is it coming from government? Is it coming from the medical field? Is it coming
Or
from
loss.
employer? So if it's not coming from any of these, where do people really heal to be able to then function optimally and be a contributor to society and not a hindrance on society? And my question I ask to corporates is, if you say it's not your responsibility and they're not getting it from anywhere else,
Yeah.
shouldn't it be your responsibility? Because then the result is a better functioning employee.
And I had a similar situation where I actually had to hold an incapacity with an employee that had reached burnout, developed anxiety disorders, and was booked off and hospitalized for up to 2 months.
Mm,
Came back to the workplace. I was new in the workplace then at that point. I think I was about 2 months into the workplace at the time. And they said to me, look, handle this employee, but they actually sort of from top management kind of hinted to me, aim to get rid of her.
yep.
You know,
There we go. That's
typical
it.
usual process before even investigating and assessing with the employee
Mm,
and consulting with the employee. What are the problems? Are
mm,
there problems at home?
mm.
Can I help? You know, as HR, I do try and be a friend to my colleagues as well. And in my experience and my history, I've built up very good loyalty with all my ex-colleagues. I still am in contact with them today over the years of my
Hmm.
career.
Right.
And a lot of them actually are still coming back to me to this day. And since I've left the workplace and certain new people are hired into positions in my position, they have completely messed up this entire one company I was dealing with
Yeah.
years ago, where I was full-time employed. And it was during lockdown and everything where the fear mongering that was happening within the country during the early stages of lockdown, because of my knowledge in health and wellness, helped my employees understand it's not that scary. Just understand how to maintain and manage and
Mm,
still get to work, you know?
mm.
So
Right.
they came to me for a lot of advice and information, and we didn't have an employee wellness system where we are paying an assistance crowd to assist us with a toll-free helpline, etc. So I was it. I was a friend, I was a counselor, I was the director for getting them assistance. And in fact, in this one company, one guy came to me the one day and he said, look, Sam, he needs to speak to me. He's got a problem. I said, sure. I said, you do know whatever you tell me, yeah, does not leave my office unless you agree so. And unless there's a reason that it has to leave my office, I will inform you first. So I
Righto.
said, you're welcome to tell me anything. So he opened up and he told me one or two things. He kind of disappeared from work for 4 days, came back when we had spoken, and he said, look, Sam, firstly, he said he was kidnapped. So we question the fact of if that is real or not, because, people can say various weird things. And then in the next breath, he said he also has a drinking problem. So I said to him, okay, right. I said, what have you done about it?
Mm,
He said he's trying to get help, but he doesn't know where to go.
sure.
So that is our country,
Oh,
and the people that I've dealt with that really don't
okay.
understand there is free assistance out there. There is help. There are wellness centers you can go to. There's AA Anonymous. So I would literally get on the internet, make the call if I need to, arrange them or tell them where the nearest stations were for assistance, what days and times.
Mm,
And then I would take it to my top management and I'd say, right, he's come forward. He said he has a problem. We need to give him unpaid time off to make these meetings happen.
get the solution.
And
So there you're dealing with the psychological side, and this has come up a number of times, specifically within South Africa, where companies need to, depending on the size of them, need to actually have a psychologist, somebody with that
mm,
background, and not the HR manager, because that just takes so much time.
yeah,
And then the HR says, "Well, I need HR. Then where do I go?" So we're
yeah.
talking, yeah, we're bringing in some very interesting dynamics to the workspace around employee well-being, where you're talking about the PTSD, the crime, the statistics of what the real world that we're living in here. And South Africa is not unique in this, but it
No.
does go back to the question: how much responsibility does the employer have on this? And you're identifying and saying it's large, because if it isn't, you're just going to be losing people and replacing, and the quiet quitters and the burnout. And it's a constant cycle. So either as a company, you are investing in your people,
Mm.
or you become
Absolutely.
insignificant and you're going to be gone.
Absolutely. And they're not, just to add to that fact, to get management on board to understand that if they bully employees that come forward for assistance and help, it only leads to lost expense and sick leave.
That's it.
Think about it.
That's the
I
knock-on
mean,
effect.
but
That's
management doesn't look at it here and now. They don't put foresight to it. They look at it here and now and react according to their emotions. So management
bottom line.
actually also needs training and development to remove their emotions and bias from any situation when it comes to a financial aspect involved in consideration with regards to the employees and the employee
Yeah,
wellness
very
and
interesting.
productivity on top of that.
And I think that's a brilliant place to finish our discussion. We brought it all in. We're talking about the company culture. We're talking about the fact that it's driven from the top as well, and that a radical oversight needs to happen based upon the legislated side of business that we're finding ourselves in. Either go and tackle the government to change policy, or have a look
Agreed.
at your house and clean your house up as a leader in a
Agreed.
so,
And
Sam,
make sure
thank you
you
so
comply.
and remain
Compliance.
compliant. Sure, it'll be easier, but in the end, it's what you're doing within your company and how well are you looking after your
Absolutely.
team. And if this is what we're dealing with, then that's what companies need to address head on. So, Sam, thank you so much for your perspective. Greatly appreciated. We're here. Dr. Dineo and myself from Wellthy interviewing HR people throughout Africa. So if you're listening to this and you're saying, I'd love my perspective heard, please reach out to us. Love to hear from you. And after all of this, when we complete these interviews, we're going to be putting together a document. And what I've realized is there is no playbook, one rule, 10 steps. Not going to be
Not at
as easy as
all.
that.
One size does not fit all.
That's the
And one
truth.
size does not fit every industry company either.
That's
So
it.
people need to apply that too. Yes. Thank you, Tim, for your time. I
Pleasure.
really